Woo! Right. This is the Pregame Engineer Tailgate Mayor Racing Podcast, episode number 50. For Tuesday, May 24th, 2016. I'm Tailgate Mayor Rusty Wallace, joined remotely this time by Pregame Engineer Andrew Shorn. What's happening, buddy?
Yeah, if you didn't travel so damn much, we could do the fastest growing podcast on the internet in the PETM studio, but
well, you got to
make sure the folks out there get their content, so we're going to go ahead and do it this way.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I'm right back in D.C., where I've been spending so much time lately, and staying on the south side of the city here this last couple weeks. And I actually found me a seafood joint that's not the Red Lobster. So
no Cheddar Bay biscuits.
No Cheddar Bay biscuits this time, despite the insistence of the locals here that's got to be the best seafood restaurant. There's actually another good one called Chrisfield's here. So Chrisfield's seafood joint. So appreciate them. So
good on you, Chrisfield's.
Same way we always start this thing, man. I may be traveling, but what you drinking?
Okay, so primary beverage. I think I already warned the Twitterverse that I already got into the Jim Beam, of course. But the cool thing that I've got is I got a specialty bomber from Monday Night Brewing called the Georgian Imperial, a stout brewed with hazelnuts.
Wow.
Caption at the bottom is "Weekends are overrated." Monday night is the thing, although that was last night. But yeah, it's actually, I already tried it. It's really good.
That sounds real tasty, and I got something special too. So it turns out not only is there a seafood joint right here, but almost next door to it, there's a brewery that I didn't even know about. It's weird that there could be a brewery that I don't know about, and I've been coming here for almost 2 years now.
Serendipity.
I know, right? And all it took was me staying down here on the south side of the city. But it's called Denizens Brewing Company, and they have a big old beer garden porch area, all this cool stuff. But I'm drinking their Southside Rye IPA. You can buy it straight from the brewery because the laws here don't suck about that.
They don't have blue laws?
Yeah. But, it's weird. When you travel so much, you start learning the beer laws of all these places. So in Maryland, they can't sell you beer at the convenience store. So there's a 7-Eleven next door, can't sell beer.
What in the world?
I don't know.
Why is it different everywhere? It makes no sense.
Right? So, yeah, all the, I don't know, all that crazy mess. But, Southside Rye India Pale Ale from Denizens Brewing Company. Appreciate them for existing right next door to where I can go grab that. Because there's not really a liquor store right here nearby. I'd have to walk about 3/4 mile. But, so anyway, it's episode 50, dude. How about that?
That is, half a century, that's pretty neat. I think as we talked about in the pre-show, we would probably be having a little bit bigger celebration if our weird earthly calendar didn't happen to have 2 more weeks in it.
Yeah. And also, our Diamond Jubilee, what is it called? The number 50? Whatever the Queen's.
You're supposed to buy something expensive. That's all I know.
No, I ain't buying you no diamonds.
Well, I hope the hell not.
Or maybe a diamond, I don't know, a circular saw or something,
Oh, yeah, like diamond dust?
Yeah.
Miter saw or something?
That's as good as you're getting.
Okay, that's fine.
Well, so episode number 50, as we've been doing in the series, we've been talking about the number, and the number 50 is interesting in a few ways. I thought the coolest part, 2 Hall of Famers and 2 of the biggest names that you ever hear in NASCAR, Ned Jarrett and Junior Johnson, both have 50 wins in the Cup Series. That's a cool little number 50 for you to think about.
Well, the craziest thing about Ned Jarrett is, so there's crazy things about both guys. The crazy thing about Ned Jarrett is he pretty much gave up racing at age 32 to raise his family.
Yeah.
So who knows how many more races he could have won. Junior Johnson went to prison for several years for running moonshine.
Run and shine.
And still came back and was a competitor all the way till now. He's not involved in the sport anymore, but he was a racer and a car owner and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, and didn't you say he was the first to secure Budweiser as a sponsor?
I'm pretty sure. I don't want to totally go out on a limb, but I'm pretty sure he had Busch Light or Busch Beer rather, because there was no light then, but he had Busch on Cale Yarbrough's car in the mid to late 70s. I didn't do a lot of backup research, but I'm pretty sure.
Well, that's cool. It also kind of segues into the other number 50, old Ricky Craven, the racing sensei, had 36 races or so in the number 50 car as well, and that Budweiser number 50.
Right, and they switched the number from 25, which was a Hendrick number, to 50 because it was the anniversary, the 50th anniversary of Budweiser being a brewery in America or whatever that was. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah. Oh, well,
no, it might have been the 50th anniversary of NASCAR, come to think of it.
Okay. Well, there's your number 50 for everybody, and we going to be doing some celebrating next week when I'm back in town, Sherwin's back in town. We're going to have us a little throwdown ahead of the next one and into the next podcast. But y'all stick with us here. Let's talk. Let's talk about the All-Star race, shall we?
How long do you want to spend on this topic?
Well, good question.
That'll let me know how I talk about it.
We've got plenty of time. The word of the week that I've just heard from every outlet that exists is confusion.
Confusion is right.
Confusion.
Well, I mean, there's several different ways of looking at it. Obviously, we got attacked a little bit on the old tweeter box because of my behavior there, which was not. I hadn't really been misbehaving in that arena very much at all, especially not on the podcast handle. But somebody saying, it's really not that hard to understand the way the rules were and how it worked out. And I'm like, yeah, I can do 1 + 1, brother. I don't need you. I got an engineering degree. I don't need you to explain to me, how to count from 1 to 20 or whatever it was.
Yeah, I'd say the confusion isn't around how it ended up right there or what the rule was or the interpretation of the rule or whatever it was. I get what happened. I'm just, maybe the confusion is more, why did we get to this point? What in the world is going on? Why didn't they think of certain situations?
Well, I don't even expect them to have simulated this situation. What I expect is, and my expectation of NASCAR competition directors is being smarter than me.
Yep.
And being able to act in the moment and not freak out like a bunch of toddlers, when there's a snake in the ball pit or whatever. There's a couple of different ways they could have very easily solved the issue that arose with Matt Kenseth having not pitted, with caution laps burning up the very end of the first segment.
Yeah.
And they did it 100% the worst possible way they could have done it.
Well, so let's talk about what got us there. So Kenseth doesn't pit. You're required to pit in the first segment or whatever.
For at least 2 tires. You had to take at least 2.
It looked like he was going to wait until the last second. Other guys were doing it like in the first 10 laps just to get them tires. And he was going to wait till the very end to do it, it looked like.
Well, so what his crew chief saw is what happened with Biffle in the second segment of the showdown is they wanted to be – basically what they wanted to do is to start, 10 or 12 deep and be the only team with 4 brand new tires.
Right. And so ended up there was a caution that came out. And this is where the breakdown starts happening. Number one, the caution laps count, so they got to lap 50, and he hadn't pitted yet, and so that's a penalty on him. But he's already lapped the field now because everybody lapped the field minus.
Yeah, lapped except for about 9 cars, I think, is what it was.
Yeah. So all these dudes stuck a lap down now against a guy who's getting a penalty, like. He cheated, to use one of our words.
Cheater.
And now you're a lap down? How does that work? And so that was kind of the really puzzling part of what was the deal with that call? Why didn't they just say, all right, stop the cars for a second. Let's figure this out. Have a little powwow for 2 seconds and then fix it.
Okay, so I listened to Door Bumper Clear today like I suggested all our listeners do, and TJ Majors and Spotter Brett both talked about how when they're on the spotter stand, they have the scanner radio from NASCAR competition telling them what it is they're supposed to do, where they're supposed to line up, what's going on, where the safety trucks are and all that stuff so that everything goes hunky-dory. Well, apparently NASCAR didn't say squat. It was just silent on that end of the radio while they were trying to – and they just never talked. They never told anybody what was going on. And so you're left with – with the way NASCAR works, and I had this conversation 2 days ago before anybody said anything about it, so I feel really good about myself and my position is there was 2 really easy ways they could have fixed the problem they had. So what they did was they penalized Kenseth before anybody pitted. So now, technically, with a little bit of air quotes, the race did not have a leader. So nobody could wave around.
Yeah.
All the cars pitted on the same lap, which is not supposed to happen either. NASCAR messed this up every way from Sunday, like to use the parlance of our times. What all they really needed to do was say, okay, wait a minute, we got a weird situation where we have to penalize the leader. Let's let the lap down cars go around, then we'll penalize the leader a lap, and then we'll let people pit on sequence. Or they could have done exactly what they did, except for when they went back on the track, the pace cars should have cut in behind the lapped cars. Mm-hmm. And at that point, they could have waved around.
Yeah. I mean, anything to get that's the thing. This is the all-star race. We're already kind of racing gimmicky stuff. Don't put yourself in a weird, strange situation because of some, weird one-off rule / situation that you didn't consider. Just have them run a few caution laps and don't count those laps, and then just figure it out and just say, all right, here's what we want to happen. This isn't for points or anything, so who cares at this point? We didn't think about this situation. Here's what we're going to do. Kenseth starts at the back, plus these 9 guys get to do blah, blah, blah. I mean, just, come up with something on the spot. NASCAR is famous for making up rules as they see fit, and they didn't seem to do it this race where they could totally do that.
That's what was so strange to me, and so there was a lot of talk about, well, they should give fans the rule book, and NASCAR has vehemently been opposed to letting fans read the rule book. I wouldn't have cared what the rule book said if they made up a call that said, yeah, we're just going to wave around the lappers because this is an all-star race. And right. We just eliminated half the field by doing what we like, potentially by somebody cheating. Like you said, somebody cheated, yeah. And somehow that eliminated half the field. And that's why there's such consternation over how this went down, that all you had to do is make a really simple decision. It was either wave them around or put the pace car in the middle of them during the caution laps and wave them around. Like, it was super easy. And the fact that they can't solve that problem in the booth with the people that are supposed to be smart, they're supposed to understand the sport, and they're supposed to have the fans' best interest in mind. How they didn't figure that out is beyond me. It's unforgivable.
What it reminded me of, you remember that 2002 baseball, Major League Baseball All-Star game that ended in a tie, and people were throwing beer bottles or chanting refund. Bud Selig got like a huge ration of poo-poo for that one.
I do remember that there was a tie in the All-Star game, and it didn't go over very well.
No, it was the very next year that they decided, all right, well, the All-Star game, whoever wins that's home field advantage, National League, American League. And so maybe if we use that as a measuring stick, maybe we'll get some good out of this. So let's throw that all away and just say, okay, let's say they made the right decision. Or whatever the decision is, whether it's any of one of the umpteen things that we've already talked about and every person in the media / fandom has talked about. What did you think of the race otherwise? Like, had they fixed that correctly, would we be in a better position now, and we would have had a great time, and we'd have talked about how awesome this new format was?
Absolutely, we would have. And it wouldn't have been the format we'd be talking about. We would be talking about how there was a late last segment pass to win, which hadn't happened but once in the last 5 years or whatever that stat is. The fact that they can race side by side and really get down on each other's door, the the middle groove driver could really get down on the door of the guy running the bottom and mess his lineup by getting him loose. We hadn't seen that at Charlotte, and I mean, since they paved it, I'm not sure.
Yeah. So that was really cool. And the finish, how about the finish? That was fantastic at the very end, and having the guys with the tires. And, I mean, Jimmy Johnson didn't even stand a chance at the end right there.
Well, I think he screwed up his restart again.
Yeah, which was weird because that was part of his, that was his strategy. He did that strategy,
Right. If I get out front, there's nobody that's going to get around me. But I think that's them learning that, that's just not the case anymore. The way these cars, the way the aero is set up and the way the horsepower ratio to drag is, that if we can race side by side at Charlotte and the shortest way around isn't the best way around, I think we really hit on something.
Yeah. I'm not sure I was as big a fan of the whole picking a number with what's his butt up in the studio, and he's got to pick one of these envelopes. I think that kind of muddies or confuses the casual fan on what is he doing. Okay, he's opened up something. All right, he has a number now, and that's the number of people that are now have to wave around. Like, I think that's a little weird. Maybe they can do a little bit better with that. I don't know what the answer is necessarily, but I get why they're trying to do that, but I still thought that part was a little weird.
Yeah, I don't know that I like that very much. I don't know that I hate the idea that maybe you don't tell them exactly how many cars you're going to invert.
Yeah.
Where they said, it's either going to be 9, 10, or 11 cars they were going to invert. But you know what? We saw, this leads right into the whole 100% rule and
Yep.
Jimmy Johnson sandbagging so that he could be, the first on the front row. So, I don't know that I necessarily even hate that, to be honest with you, because it is an all-star race.
Exactly.
And the idea is to win. So if the rules are such that you can play games like we've seen at Martinsville and other places where they try not to be the first one out or they try not to be an odd one out because they want to be, they want to be on the outside to start, or they want to be on the inside to start, whether it's Bristol or Martinsville or wherever, in those places where it really matters. I don't know that I have a problem with that, to be honest with you. I don't know that I have a problem with Jimmy letting people pass him.
Well, and I would say that 100% rule in this sort of case doesn't mean that you have to be on the gas every time that you can be on the gas.
Well, it could be strategy.
You're 100% trying to win this race. He wasn't trying not to win the race. All right, guys. Well, we had a little technical difficulty there. We're back. Don't worry, the beer is still full. We saved the beer. But I might have lost our train of thought a little bit. Maybe the PETM posse can remind us of that later on and make fun of us online. But either way, I think the All-Star race can be something really cool. I'm looking forward to it next time and see what sort of changes they make. What do you think, Sherman?
Well, the thing is, and I totally agree with Spotter Brett and TJ Majors, that NASCAR puts on the best all-star event in professional sports. It is much more on the edge of your seat entertaining than the others. I watched the All-Star baseball game. That's close. But the Pro Bowl game, it sucks. The NBA, not so much. And, of course, I don't give a damn about that skatey stick stuff.
And you actually agreed with them. They kind of agreed with you, I should say, on running the All-Star race in the reverse direction.
Well, I jumped up and down like a child because Brett said, I think they ought to run this thing in reverse. So we turn right instead of left. And TJ sort of made fun of him. He goes, that's what your guy does anyway. But they dig on each other. But you know what? I was kind of a little giddy there. I had a little moment all by myself here at the home office.
Well, let me tell you about having a moment. I had a bit of a story, and I told it to you, and I've been telling everybody I can, but I wanted to save it for the podcast. It's pretty cool. So bear with me, PETM posse, and I promise it'll pay off. As you know, we're both big Casey Kane fans here, and we're both on the NASCAR Fan Council deal. And as part of that, you enter who your favorite driver is and all that, and you get contacted for all these kind of surveys and blah, blah, blah. And I guess one of their rules usually is like, don't talk about the fan council or whatever. But I'm fixing to talk about the fan council. So I got this email, and it said, hey, NBC on NASCAR will be they're conducting this phone survey. And since NBC's fixing to take over after July 4th and all that, I figure, yeah, I'll do that. And they said, just give us your phone number, and we'll contact you. And so I gave them my phone number. Next thing I know, they turn around and they actually give me a call this past Friday, and they say, hey, just wanted to make sure you're still in for the whole NASCAR on NBC survey thing. Just want to get your opinion on some stuff. And I said, yeah, okay, sure. I don't care. Yeah, I'm definitely in. So about an hour later, I get a phone call, and they said, hey, this is John from NBC on NASCAR. How you doing today? I said, hey, John, I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing? And he said, yeah, I'm doing great. He said, just got a few questions for you, about a 5-minute survey. Should be pretty quick. And I said, yeah, shoot for it. And he said, well, first of all, I'm looking here. Do you have a favorite NASCAR driver? That was his first question. I said, yeah, man, I'm a big Casey Kane fan, have been for a long time. And then he started going down that road, and he said, well, as a big Casey Kane fan, how long you been a Casey Kane fan? I told him that. He said, how'd you become a Casey Kane fan? And for those of you who haven't heard how I became a fan, back in, well, whenever it was that Rusty was retiring, of course, my name also kind of being a namesake to Rusty himself, the actual driver. I'm also Rusty. And so I said, I was always a Rusty Wallace fan. And as he was retiring, I needed somebody new to root for. Figured here's a guy coming into Bill Elliott's car, that old number 9 with the feathers, and said, yeah, why not root for this guy? He's pretty unique too. He comes from a dirt background and all that stuff. So I gave him the story of that. And he said, oh, man, that's really cool. And he said, okay, so next question, fill in the blank on this sentence. Casey Kane is blank. And I thought for a little while, and I was trying to think of a good word or group of words or something. I already said it to the posse here. I said, well, it's I'm going to go with unique again, because, again, he is coming from the dirt background, coming from a place that's not the Southeast U.S., and all that sort of stuff. So I think it's pretty cool. And I'm a little bit kind of weirded out by the fact that this is supposed to be a NASCAR on NBC survey, and he just keeps going down this road. And I said, okay, whatever. So then he says, have you ever met Casey Kane? And I said, actually, I have. As a matter of fact, me and Sherwin met Casey Kane at the Bristol meetup. So he had this like question and answer session thing going on at the Bristol meetup. So we saw him there, and ended up, after it was all done, he came out in the audience. He was shaking hands with people and taking pictures and signing autographs. And I said, yeah, I actually met him, and I shook his hand there. So that was really cool. It was kind of a neat deal to be a part of and be able to shake his hand and all that. It's just kind of a neat thing. And he sort of laughed, and he said, what's funny? I remember that. I was there too. I was at that Bristol meetup. And I said, you were there? You got to be kidding. That's crazy. This John from NASCAR on NBC was at the Bristol meetup for Casey Kane. And he laughs, and he goes, yeah, man, I'm Casey Kane. And that blew my mind. And suddenly I am screaming and yelling. I yell, holy bleep, but without the bleep, of course, and end up talking with Casey Kane on the phone. It was a whole surprise survey, whatever deal they were doing. It all started making sense. And it's funny, you get that perspective, you get that expectation that, okay, I'm doing a NASCAR on NBC survey. Okay, this is John from NBC and whatnot. But then he identifies himself as Casey Kane, and immediately I recognize his voice. There's no doubt it's Casey. And so, that was that was my story. I ended up talking with him for another 5 minutes, even unabashedly told him about the podcast and all that sort of stuff. So it's old Rusty's story about getting to talk with Casey Kane randomly on the internet. What do you think, Sherwin?
Well, so I'm super jealous, obviously, because they called me and told me to be on standby for a particular period of time, and then it didn't work out for me. They reached their Casey Kane quota, and you were higher on the list than me, which is fine. So I was way more excited for you that you got that experience than I was disappointed for me that I didn't. I think that's a really neat thing that they're doing. I think that's probably the first time that we've really seen a really nice benefit from having been a fan council member and now answered 80, 100 surveys. You more than me. Yep. You've been there 1 year longer than I have. So it's neat. I mean, that's a cool way to do things.
Well, and NBC sponsored it. Props to them for putting that on. I mean, just making people like me just feel all giddy and everything. So that's something that I'll remember forever, obviously. And despite what we might poo-poo on NBC for, I'm always going to have that love for them for doing something like that. So they sent I got a follow-up call, and they said hey, we hope you enjoyed that, and I thanked them and all that for it. And then afterwards they said what we want to do is send you a release form so that we can use the audio of your reaction to that. And I said, oh yeah, go ahead and send it, I'll sign it. And I said, but I don't know if you was listening in, but I might have yelled a little bit of a cuss word there. So my apologies on that one. So my first reaction was holy bleep. And so what can I say?
Well, that's the reason why we do that segment from time to time on the podcast, because we are human. We've stated many times, we don't want this to be a cuss word riddled podcast. There are going to be occasions where something will happen and it'll slip through, and it's really not that big a deal. But yeah, no, that's perfect reaction.
It was. I hope they use it just for the sake of they're going to have to bleep me out. And so they're going to be like, and here's Casey Kane's obviously biggest fan. Holy bleep. Are you serious? So, yeah, that'll be real cool. So I signed it and returned it back to him and everything. So yeah, we'll see. But man, that's, there's so many of the media guys, podcast guy, everybody who says they're, well, I'm a big fan of the sport, and same here. I'm a huge fan of the sport. If Casey Kane retires tomorrow, it doesn't change how many races I'm watching or what I'm doing on the podcast. But having somebody to root for and then being able to have that experience, I mean, that's something else. And can't thank NBC and NASCAR enough for putting that on.
Real cool, for sure. I was even sort of jealous of the way that you kind of nosed your way in when we went to that meet and greet and got to actually shake his hand. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well,
you go to a Casey Kane meet and greet, and it's going to be, frankly, a lot of people kind of gushing over how he looks and all that sort of stuff. And so I think maybe it was a better breath of fresh air for the one guy to be like, hey, man, can I just shake your hand here? And he stuck his hand out and said, yeah, man. And shook his hand and said, hey, appreciate it, Casey. So, that's a cool deal.
Well, it was the same thing with Bobby Allison, when you were trying to set up to take a picture, and I just wanted to shake the man's hand, because I'll remember that forever.
Well, for sure. So let's move on. This weekend, the big three, we got Monaco, Indy 500, Coke 600, all on, Sunday, starting early in the morning with Monaco, and then 500 miles and 600 miles to go after that.
Yep, 1,262 miles on the greatest day in motorsports.
So I don't have a whole lot to say about Monaco other than, it's F1. The same guy has won every race this year except for the last one because he wrecked out, and that was like the biggest news in F1 season. I don't know. I'm being too bitter. I'm being a bad guy. Sorry.
So I don't even know who it is, to be honest with you.
What's his butt? You're killing me.
Is it Vettel?
No. I'll look it up real quick. But 100th running of the Indy 500.
Well, that's pretty cool. All right. So I want to go ahead and say what I want to say about the Monaco GP is the only reason why I DVR it and record it is, A, I ain't getting up at 8 a.m. to start watching racing that ain't going to finish till midnight. And B, that race is super boring. The only time anything interesting happens is when Lewis Hamilton pits off sequence and screws himself.
Yeah. And that's that track is so, it's not to take anything away from these guys. Those machines are ridiculous. There's more money put into those machines, more people, more time, more technology than just about anything else out there. And on top of that, to race those vehicles is unbelievable. They you can't even start them without a computer to start with, and just to race those, they're so on the edge, the G-forces and all that. But that track in particular, which is the most prestigious one, is so narrow that these open wheel cars can't make a whole lot of passes, and they generally don't. So it's kind of a parade laps going through a very expensive part of town.
Yeah, well, the fact that Monaco itself is so old and it's sort of a municipality, kind of a country all in of its own, the fact that they've been running there for all this time and we've had advancement in technology to the point where we're at now. And if you look at the layout of that track, there are a lot of really straight areas of it. So you get these really high speeds, which unfortunately, while speed is fun, it doesn't usually lead to a lot of passing. I think that's why we like Infineon or Sonoma, over Watkins Glen, even though I love them both, because Infineon has slow places, or Sonoma. Crap, I keep screwing that up. Sonoma has slow places where we can actually get some passing, whereas Watkins Glen is so fast that it's really all about the car and not as much about the driver.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so that takes us to Indy 500. Who is on the pole for the Indy 500, Sherman?
Oh, yeah, hell yeah. James Hinchcliffe, man. How about the dude Rex?
Hinchtown.
Yeah, Hinchtown. Dude Rex, and a piece of the suspension pierces his femoral artery. He basically almost dies on the track, and then a year later he's on the pole. There's no story that gets better than that.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool as hell, and you got to be a fan of him on the 100th running for him to run that. But it's a lot of stories.
Well, I latched onto him. There's a couple of different guys that I like, and of course I like a couple of different owners. But I latched onto James Hinchcliffe. I was really disappointed for him that he got injured the way he did last year, and then didn't even get to run, obviously because he was fighting for his life. And so this is a really neat deal. I'm jacked up. I'm probably more excited for this Indy 500 than I've ever been.
Yeah, yeah. So same here. I'm excited, and I started following the sport more and more. So there's a lot of guys who I'm following now, as opposed to just like Juan Pablo Montoya or one or two other guys. So yeah.
Well, I see. So one of the things that's kind of to flip the coin a little bit, not that I'm trying to go to a dark place, but this is like the fewest cars that have showed up for an Indy race in quite a long time, and I really think that is a testament to the technology involved in being competitive. You know, we're not going to see 2 or 3 cars trying to run 15 mile an hour off the pace and still make the race, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I think NASCAR folks have kind of been. Traditional folks have been a little upset that we only have 40 cars show up every week, but I'm like, yeah, but we don't have any starting parkers. Not at the highest level. We don't.
Yep. Well, and that takes us to the Coke 600.
The World 600. If you're junior, junior, and you got Mountain Dew sponsorship.
Good point. But
he gets away with it because he's an Earnhardt.
That's for sure. That's for sure. So let's see if we're doing picks on this. I mean, I don't know what else there is to say about the Coke 600 other than you got to watch, and if you don't start watching when it starts, I mean, start watching it at any time of day. It's on all day.
True.
So let's see. You had last week you had picked Chase to transfer on the merit and Denny Hamlin to win. Although Chase had some of the best racing of the weekend, that's probably worth. A mention at least.
Oh, for sure. That third segment of the showdown was phenomenal. I had to go back and watch it on replay because I didn't get to see it live. I was out schmoozing with friends and whatnot and so forth, and the rain kind of monkeyed with all the schedules and stuff, and it was hard to figure out when it was going to happen. But if you don't like that last 4 laps in that showdown again with Kyle and Chase, you don't like stock car racing.
Yeah,
that's the bottom line.
Yeah, and the Coke 600. I just said that if you can't watch the beginning, watch it later. It's on all day. But that's part of the appeal here is that whoever we pick right now, and I picked Benedetto out of the Heart to do the transfer, and I picked Brad Keselowski, who ended up second. Just because he was the brainchild of that whole all-star race deal. But number one, there's a ton of good picks. We were talking in our own 2-person pre-show about how there's so many good picks for the 600, but it's the biggest test, I think, of the year because you're going to be during the day and you're going to be at night. You're going to be running 600 miles. There's the physical part of it. There's the strategy part of it. There's, how many pit stops? 10, 12 pit stops that they have to make. So it's a big deal to even finish the dang thing, much less have 20 cars vying for the win at the very end.
Yeah, I mean, let's not forget we had 13 pit stops for 4 tires at Atlanta. I mean, that's what we want to see out of Charlotte. I don't think we're quite there yet, but we'll get there. I think Charlotte's probably going to produce more cautions related to crashing. One thing I did want to bring up is Denny Hamlin, who is who is want to take shots at Brad Keselowski. And the only reason I can assume is because Brad's won a championship and Denny hasn't, and Denny thinks he's a better racer and all that stuff. But Denny was quick to correct Dave Moody that the drivers did not come up with the format for the All-Star race. Brad Keselowski did.
I saw that.
And he wanted to make sure everybody knew that most of the drivers did not like the format. Well, you know what? Tough poop, all right?
Yeah.
The format was not what made that race while we're talking about it. And we already talked about too much about the All-Star race, but I think 600 is going to be great. I think, I think it's going to be maybe a little bit warmer this weekend than it was last, which means that whole side-by-side and picking lanes to run your car in is going to matter even more.
Mm-hmm.
And we already saw some really neat stuff this past weekend. So I don't know if the package will be the same. They said, obviously, that the Cup was going to run a little bit even more, a more non-aero-friendly setup with not being able to put any rear toe in. So the crab crawl was going to be less. Yep. So it'll be interesting to see, what goes down on Thursday night when we get to qualifying.
So it takes us to picks. I guess I have to pick first. And you even pre-cussed me out in the pre-show that I better not take your pick. And now I'm not going to say scared, but I'm kind of like, oh man, maybe I did pick his pick because I think mine is a good pick and it's somewhat unique among the number of good picks that there are out there. I'm picking Harvick.
I like that pick. That's a great pick. I think it was pretty obvious during the All-Star race they didn't care as much about winning it as they did about learning stuff, which, if it's going to be a gimmicky race, then I think you're allowed that, especially in this kind of sport where that stuff really matters. I think my pick is going to be Joey Logano. We've seen the winner of the All-Star race win the 600 about 4 different times now.
Mm-hmm.
And Joey's not won the 600 yet, and he is dynamite on mile and a halves.
That's also a great pick. And I didn't want to name all the other possible great picks and then, burn yours somehow. But, think about Jimmy Johnson always at Charlotte.
He has 6 wins at Charlotte.
Kyle Larson is a fantastic pick right now with the streak he has going and the numbers he's been putting up, and especially at the mile and a half right here. I think he's due.
If the track is fast and there are multiple grooves, Kyle Larson is going to be in there.
Yeah. And just because of the story and because of the heart and because he's won it before, I'm going Casey as a dark horse. Just because
I was going to pick Casey as my dark horse. I want to do what you did maybe last week or 2 weeks ago, I guess. Junior wants to win the World 600 worse than he wants to win any other race he hasn't won yet.
Mm-hmm.
And he's never won at Charlotte in a Cup car. So I'm going to go with Junior as my dark horse.
Junior as a dark horse is always kind of funny to hear.
It's iffy. Yeah, it's a toss-up.
But, it's okay. It's okay. That's a pick from the heart. And it's
as Evan would say, that's picking under caution, but I'm okay with it.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I think that's about all I got. Let's start shouting out. And first off, let me thank everybody. We're up to 1,200 followers. We'll shout out to our 1,200th here in a moment. But I want to thank everybody for following along. You know what we didn't do? I didn't write it down. I'm such a lots of cuss words. We didn't talk about the PETM podcast car, the Kenny Smith 25.
Oh, we have to now. Kenny got another top 10. Got a 7.
Top 10. Not only that, I think it was 9th place, and he even posted pictures of the vibrating steering wheel or steering column, something that he had.
Oh, that's right. All the nuts backed off of his steering wheel studs. How crazy is that?
And he finished 9th still, and he said he don't even know how he drove the thing even after the race was over doing parade laps. He didn't know how he even got it back to the hauler, much less how he even finished top 10 again. So top 10 machine is what we're calling him still.
I'm surprised he's got any teeth left in his head.
I hear you with all that chattering. And this weekend, everybody do your anti-rain dance. He posted the forecast, and it's like 80% chance of rain every night. So we'll see if we get any racing in this week. But either way, we'll be looking for looking for Kenny on the tracks. Good
For
deal.
sure.
Again, we want to thank everybody for listening. All 1,200 of y'all out there, the PETM posse, y'all are the best. Shouting out to number 1,200 himself. Sherwin, go ahead. Who was that?
That's Ryan Donlin.
Ryan Donlin, you the man.
DONLON 88.
88.
I would have to assume that he's a Dale Earnhardt Jr. fan. He was I interacted with him briefly to thank him for being our 1,200th follower. That's pretty cool. Milestones, we're reaching them. Our end goal, like we said, or our stretch goal is 1,400 followers by the Coke Zero 400 at Daytona, the first weekend in July. So we've got about 5 weeks to make that happen.
Yes, sir. So everybody, tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your wife, hide your kids,
hide your wife, hide your kids.
We're coming at you. Man, what can I say? I'm looking forward to the weekend. Huge weekend. Follow us at PETM Podcast, of course, or PETMpodcast.com. Y'all, we're on YouTube. We're on Google Play Podcast Music. We're on iTunes. We're on everything. If you search PETM Podcast on the internet, you go and find it.
Yeah, I think we've finally got enough places where you can just go to that Google search bar and put in the old PETM Racing Podcast, and you're going to find where we're at. I'm Andrew Sherwin at Pregame ENG, and my co-host is
at Tailgate Mayor Rusty Wallace. And we'll talk to y'all next week. Big episode coming up next week, Sherwin. Let's do this.
All right. Thumbs up.